is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who here on KC Sports Network, presented by you, the fine folks of people listening to this podcast. I'm joined as always by Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson. We are so stoked to have Gabe back. He decided to return our text, return our messages, and he has decided to rejoin the podcast here. Gabe, how are you? How was your vacation?
It was good. I highly recommend a 2-week vacation in the middle of the football season. Every year, that might be a thing. Power Mizzou is still running. The podcast appears to still be going. I'm not sure I'm all that necessary. I may move back.
That's probably wise words. I would encourage it, actually, truthfully. I saw you tweet out a picture of the AP Italy, that was a pretty cool shot.
I did not get hired, so
crap. Sorry. There's always next year. Maggie, how are you doing?
Good. I don't know if anybody listened to our podcast while you were gone, Gabe. I didn't look at listeners or anything.
I would tell you I did, but I didn't.
No,
I will tell at some point.
I mean, maybe like one person told me they listened, but I don't know if anybody else listened.
It's one more than I thought, truthfully. Big win there for us. Missouri coming into this game. Obviously, Maggie, you and I broke this game down last week. They do lose 49-39, 10-point loss. They do not cover. The way that game ended was very unceremonious. But, Gabe, I want to get your first thoughts, first reactions from the end result of that game.
Well, my first reaction at the pick six was, Scott Van Pelt's going to talk about this game.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to happen. But, like, I understand. I was actually pretty impressed with the reaction. I haven't seen a lot of over-the-top, jumping off any bandwagons or anything like that. But same token, when you're up 22-7 at home, you need to win. When your offense, comes back and gives you the lead with 5.5 minutes left, you need that defense to hold it. When you get back down to the 40-yard line, it's okay if you don't score. It's less okay if you don't score because the center forgets when to snap the ball. So I understand, like, micro level being frustrated about the game. 6 weeks ago, I think all of us would have said best case scenario for this team after 6 games is 5-1 with a competitive loss to LSU. That's where they're at. Yes, you would have had some people say, well, why can't they be 6-0? But that's kind of fantasy land. I mean, could they have been 6-0? Yes, but nobody would have expected it.
Yeah. I saw on Power Mizzou, Gabe, you said this, and since you didn't listen to the podcast, I feel like I get to say this. Tucker said this multiple times last week. We talked about it, and you said the same thing on Power Mizzou, that we were playing with house money. And so it's really funny that you put that on your 10 things, because Tucker said the same thing.
Well, and the reason, I didn't make a pick before the game because I thought it was kind of unfair, not having seen Vandy, not having seen LSU, Ole Miss. I'm not just going to fly, but I would have picked LSU by 6 points. I told people before the game I'd pick LSU by 6. And the reason was because, if LSU loses that game, the season is, dumpster fire. People are starting to talk about how much does it cost to get rid of Brian Kelly. Not that they would have fired him, but that's where it would have gone. LSU had to win that game. Missouri wanted to win that game, but it didn't have
to. And honestly, we probably should have. I mean, the way that we were moving the ball, the fact that we had the ball in LSU territory under 2 minutes, there's really no reason that we shouldn't have won that game. We just, and I hate saying this, but we kind of Mizzou'd that game away. It's like you said, we had 2nd and 1. Do I think that we should have probably ran the ball and just got a fresh set of downs? Yes, but
let's talk about that in a minute, because I actually don't agree, but go ahead.
I didn't figure that you would agree, but I'm going to say it anyways, because that's just what I like looking at it, seeing it 2nd and 1 in my mind. Cody Schrader's moving the ball quite well. I saw on Drink's press conference, he said he didn't think that we were running the ball that well. I mean, I thought Cody Schrader had a pretty good game. I think, what did he do? He went 13 carries for 114 yards, 3 touchdowns. I thought
pretty good game.
Pretty good game, if you ask me.
Yeah,
But so you had that, but then obviously the fallout came immediately after that. I mean, if you make that catch on that 2nd and 1, nobody's talking about how you run the ball on the 2nd and 1. But then it's the snap infraction, and then it's the fumble, and then what are you at? 4th and 29? Was it 4th and 29? 4th and
32?
Something absolutely crazy that you can't really come back from at that point. So, but anyways, like I went on an LSU podcast last week, and I said the same thing about how losing this game was never going to determine if this was a successful season for Mizzou or not. Like, we still have every chance to have a successful season. I mean, even going 9-3, going 8-4, that's a successful season for Mizzou at this point.
Oh, yeah.
But we still have to play every single team except Vandy from the East. Like, we can still have as successful of a season as we want to have. It just comes down to what we want to do.
So you said Mizzou should have won the game. I'm curious, do you guys think Mizzou should have won or Mizzou could have won?
Well, I think
because I think if LSU had lost that game, they're saying the same thing Missouri is. Man, we really blew. Like, I think both sides. I don't think it was an incredibly there was like 97 penalties in that game.
Yeah.
Like, I think both teams very well could have won that game, but I don't know if I go to I think there's a difference between could have and should have.
I think us having the ball with 2 minutes left, the way that we had moved the ball all game, I think we should have won that game. I don't think looking pregame. I mean, I picked us to win on this podcast, and I picked the score. Looking back in retrospect, kind of low. And a lot of people were like, I picked 35-32 Mizzou. And people were like, how'd you get 32? At one point, the score was 35-32. I do just want to throw that out there because we did go for that 2-point conversion, which was kind of crazy. But I think that in that situation with 2 minutes left, we should have won the game. I don't know if, I think that throughout the entire game, I agree with you. I think LSU fans, if they would have lost that game, they would have felt the same way. But we talked about this at the end of the Memphis game, that all you can ask for is to have the ball in your hands at the end of the game. And we had the ball in our hands at the end of the game with the opportunity to win the game. So in my opinion, I think we should have won that game.
And I will say this, if they don't get the penalty on 3rd and 1, I think they do win the game.
I agree with you.
And I think they probably win it in regulation.
Yeah. I agree with you. I don't think that we have to kick a field goal to tie it. I think they move the ball down and probably score
in the last minute.
Yes. Yep. I think they run the clock, which is why I thought that they would maybe run the ball on the 2nd and 1. Because how many timeouts? We still have 3, right? We have 2 or 3.
3, because they used the ball in the last LSU.
Because that's why Drake said that why he was confident that we would get the ball back after we went for it on the 4th,
right.
4th and long. Why he was confident we would get the ball back because we had all those timeouts.
Yeah. I think you got to give a hat tip to LSU's defense and the adjustments that they made at halftime coming out. I think that deserves. I mean, LSU was probably one of the worst secondaries in terms of the Power 5, and they were able to adjust and not allow them to Luther Burden to continually gash them or Theo Week to continually gash them. So I think that there gives them a little bit there. That's an interesting question that you asked, Gabe. And I was pondering that. Could they have won? Should they have won? And I'm with you on the same page as if they get that 3rd and 1, they should have won the game. But as I mentioned all last week, this game, and I don't think anyone has really thought that the season's totally over, right? I think even and some of my responses to all right, it's just fine. On to Kentucky. Kentucky's a big game. That'll be a good one that's under the lights. It's a primetime game. I'm sure we'll talk about that game here in a little bit. But you got to be able to flip the switch quick onto that one. But LSU was coming off a game to Ole Miss where they kind of got embarrassed, truthfully. I mean, you're losing to Ole Miss team that it's not Lane Kiffin's best team. I don't think he's had there. An Ole Miss team that against Alabama kind of got rolled up, and Alabama has shown that they're probably not the same Alabama. So it's interesting with LSU coming into this game, and Gabe, I think you hit the nail on the head. That game meant a little bit more in terms of LSU's season than it did for Missouri's season. But I thought the offense overall has played really well. I mean, Luther Burden continues to be the guy that we thought he was going to be. And dare I say it, Gabe, is Luther Burden exceeding expectations? I know that we had a high expectations for him. I know last year we started the podcast and you were like, what's your expectations for Luther Burden? One of our first episodes, that's that what it was. And he seems to be exceeding expectations now as he has nearly 150 yards in this game. And he is continually leads the SEC in receiving yards. I believe he leads the country.
Yeah.
Okay. That's insane. Well, there's some pretty darn good wide receivers. I had tweeted out during the game a video of his touchdown, and I said, or not his touchdown, the deep pass that he got, where he went up and got it over the guy, and I said, like, he's the best underclassman wide receiver in the country. And some people were very quick to push back and say, like, no, he's the best wide receiver in the country. Listen, Marvin Harrison Jr. is pretty darn.
Marvin Harrison Jr., by the way, technically still an underclassman.
That is true.
I mean, he can go pro, but he's a true junior. Yeah.
But I did not think about that. That is true. And he could be in an NFL offense like tomorrow and be okay, and you would not notice him there. Marvin Harrison Jr. is that good. He's that dude. There's a lot of good guys around the country, like Roma Dunzi. But I mean, if you look at, I saw someone in our KCSN Discord, I think Steve Gray put this out there in our KCSN Discord. We talk about the Texas receiving room having a lot of good guys, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. Combine both of those guys' yardage, Luther Burden still has more than both of those guys combined. So he's been having an incredible year. And Gabe, to the question I asked you before I just started answering it myself, is he exceeding our expectations?
He's exceeding mine. Yeah. I mean, before the season, the topic kind of was, can he have 1,000-yard season? And we said, yeah, he can. Will he? I don't know, but he can. I ran the numbers comparing him, and like people that have been on Power Mizzou since 2009 are so tired of hearing me say this, but like Denario Alexander's 2009 season is like, hang it in the Louvre. It is unbelievable. It's the best non-quarterback season I've ever seen at the University of Missouri. And it was just, I mean, it was every single week what he was doing. And so I ran the numbers on Saturday night, and I heard Mike Kelly say on the broadcast that Luther has more receiving yards than any player through 6 games in Missouri history. He said that, by the way, at halftime. And he has somewhere around 150 more yards than Denario had through 6 games in that 2009 season. Now, hang on, because I wrote this morning. I'm going to read you Denario's last 7 games in that season.
Okay.
6 for 74, average day, 6 for 74 against Texas. 8 for 123 and 2 touchdowns. 13 for 214 and a touchdown. 10 for 203 touchdowns at Kansas State in the single best game I've ever seen a Missouri player play. 11 for 173 and a touchdown. 15 for 233 and a touchdown. And 6 for 137 and a touchdown. I mean, his worst game in the second half of the season was 6 for 137. So as good as Luther's been in the last 7 games, he has to have legitimately 1,000 yards from here on out to catch Denario. But he's got a chance.
Yeah.
And he's on pace. He's got 11 more catches than Denario had at this point in the season, you know, and I think the best sign to me, though, is not what Luther's done. It's that Theo Weiss has turned into maybe not what everybody hoped he was, but pretty good. Mookie Cooper, I'll be honest, I'd given up on Mookie. 2 games in, I said, this isn't working, guys. Like, it's I don't know why it's not going to happen. And just personally, I got to know Mookie because I did a video thing with him, you know, last spring. And I'm so happy for the kid to finally in his 4th year of college football to be doing what he's doing. I mean, he made a couple of big time catches, including the one I think that got Missouri down to the 41 that had them kind of in position to maybe go win that game. So I think not bigger because what Luther's doing is like first team All-American stuff, but just as big is the fact that other guys are now contributing as well, because there were a couple games there where it was like build the whole plane out of Luther. And now it's like Luther's the engine, but like there's some other parts here that make it work.
Yeah. And I put it in my notes. I was like, Mookie had a great day. And I mean, he had the same amount of yards as Theo. I mean, Theo had 4 catches for 80 yards and Mookie had 7 catches for 80 yards. But I mean, both players contributing 80 yards either way is amazing. I mean, they're such a good complementary system. And that's what I said.
And by the way, they played that game without Mekhi Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, who is probably their number 4 receiver.
Right. I mean, and it was a day, and Marquise Johnson was in there because he played on some kick returns or, some kickoffs, but like he didn't have, I don't think he had any receptions.
I don't think he had catch. Daniel Blood had a couple.
Yeah, he did, because I was like, who caught that? And then they said it, and I was like, oh, nice, another.
I said, I do not know who that guy is.
Including the catch on the really weird hook and ladder that they somehow thought was maybe going to pick up 32 yards, I guess.
Yeah. But no, I was really happy for Mookie too. You like to see them getting all of them involved, and especially just somebody that's kind of had a rough go like Mookie. But yeah, I tell people every time I go on a guest podcast, I'm like, you can't just focus all of your energy on Luther Burden, because if you do that, you're going to end up getting burned by Theo or Mookie.
And that was the thing that we had talked about at the beginning of the season. I can remember, like, this offense will be good with Luther, but like it's going to really be determined how good this offense can be as if the other pieces. I really loved in the opening drive, I believe it was the opening drive, where they threw the ball to Theo in the end zone. He didn't catch the first one. And then they're like, all right, let's go right back to you.
Same play.
And then it was the same play. And then he's like, okay, we got it. I really have been impressed with Theo Weiss again. To kind of reiterate what you guys were saying, I didn't necessarily anticipate like this, getting this output from Theo Weiss. We knew that he could be good, but getting this output from him has been very good. Marquise Johnson, looking at it here, 2 catches, 42 yards. It's like one of those things, just like, where did this?
I forgot of him. I don't remember either of those catches.
I don't either. To be honest with you.
I think one of them was a deep ball too, because that's literally all the passes he catches are just deep balls. But like that's the guy who's just like, wait, where did this guy come from? And that's what you want to see. And Maggie, I had mentioned this, and we even clipped it for social when I can remember Eli Dringos at the beginning of the year saying, like, I'm tired of talking about how much potential this wide receiver room has. I want to see them actually go out there and do it. They're now going out there and doing it. Big reason is because I think of Brady Cook. Like, Brady Cook has been playing very well. I know it was really disappointing to obviously see him throw that interception and the streak be broken. But then the pick 6, the way that game ended, was very disappointing as well, because his decision making has been so good this year.
But let's be honest, that pick 6 only mattered for the bettors. Missouri was not going 95 yards in 30 seconds.
That's fair. I think that like there was some optimism. Maybe not for me, because of the way that the offense had like kind of stuttered and stalled. A lot of it was self-inflicted, but I did think LSU did a lot better job in the second half of playing Brady Cook and playing Luther Burden. I think I meant to run the numbers on this before, but I think he only had like 40-some yards in the second half. Luther did, so they did a really good job of containing Luther. And like, listen, those guys are on scholarship too. Like, those are some good players. I think it showed some real talent on the LSU team. Mizzou's almost there. Like, I think that's what we can say is like Mizzou is almost to that level of the LSU's and up there. They're almost just about there, but didn't quite get over the top. I think a big part of that though, Jane Daniels played a hell of a game. That dude, he's a dog. Like, to take that hit, which was a late hit, and
late hit, but not dirty.
Right.
Like, if they'd have flagged that, I'd have had a big problem with that.
It wasn't dirty. You're right.
It's what happens when you're a running quarterback, though. A lot of the time, I mean,
100%
should maybe expect to get hit a lot.
And so this kind of takes me into the next one I want to talk about. We got to take a break first, but I want to talk about the defense a little bit. First, I got to say, you guys, about home field apparel. I'm rocking the home field apparel hoodie, very comfortable hoodie that I like here. I got it, and Maggie's rocking the mighty. That's a Big 8 champion shirt? Is that correct?
Yes.
1961. That's pretty sick.
1960, right?
This is 61 right on the shirt. I'm looking right at it.
61, and it says 60 on the bottom, so I don't know.
It just covered all of the dates.
Yeah, just whatever you feel like. Whatever you feel like. But they got some great designs over at homefieldapparel.com. Make sure you go check them out. Use the code KCSN23 for 15% off your first order. Get a hoodie, get a shirt, be suited and booted for the next time the Missouri Tigers have a home game in Columbia, or if you're going down to Lexington, make sure you're suited up for that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the defense. Is there signs for concern? Is there starting to worry about the defense? Let's talk about it next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
All right, welcome back into Mizzou. That's Who here on KC Sports Network. This has kind of been a point that people in my mentions have been saying this about the Missouri defense. You look at some of the last few point totals that they've allowed, not necessarily what we would expect if you would have said at the beginning of the season. They would allow as many points as they did against Memphis and Vandy. Now, to be fair, LSU's got some absolute dudes at wide receiver. They've got two of the best wide receivers in the SEC. And they had themselves a day. Sometimes you just can't stop it. But Gabe, did this game cause any alarm bells to go off for the Mizzou defense in the way that they played it? And even, they had an injured, I can see some people's point of view being like, they had an injured quarterback and they let him run all over him in the last little bit there to let him come back. What are your thoughts on the Missouri defense?
Yeah, this game didn't cause alarm bells for me. The game LSU played on Saturday was exactly pretty much their average for the season. They're averaging 45 points a game and like 15 more yards per game than they got against Missouri. This is what they do. Yeah. LSU held them to 24, but that's kind of it. I mean, I think it's a perfect example of all we do is focus on our team. What did our team do wrong to let this, like, if you're watching that game and go, oh my God, Luther Burden's great and LSU can't cover him. Well, guess what? Malik Neighbors is great too. And, so it can't be, well, they can't cover our guy, but why the hell can't we cover their guy? Because he's a really good player. The tough part with Daniels is, and Ben Fredrickson brought this up post-game with Darius Robinson, like you want to get pressure on the quarterback, but that actually almost makes him better. Because Tyron Hopper got back there and Daniels just like, yeah, bye, I'm go that way. And then he hurdled a guy on third down, and he is fast, man, for a quarterback. I mean, I don't know that he's Brad Smith fast, but he's not that much slower, and he throws the ball a lot better than Brad did. So it almost like it made me think of when Missouri went to Lawrence in Brad's junior year, and Mark Mangino he didn't rush the quarterback. He said, we're just going to stand here and kind of make your offensive linemen think maybe they have to try. But we're going to stand here because we're not going to let you run the football on us. But the problem with Daniels is you can't do that because he's a good pass. He's an NFL quarterback, and he played like an NFL quarterback. And now, look, I'm not trying to make the guy into, maybe Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton quite yet, but he's the best quarterback Missouri's going to play this year. And sometimes the other guy makes plays. It's inexcusable to let him out at 3rd and 9. No other player on Missouri's schedule makes the play he made on 3rd and 9. There's not another one, and so sometimes you just say, hey, man, you got by a guy that's a really good player. And that doesn't mean everything's okay with Missouri's defense, because I've got some concerns, but it's not specifically because of Saturday.
Yeah, they just have so many weapons. I mean, their running back was great. I mean, Logan Diggs rushed for 134 yards.
And like 100 in the first half.
Yeah.
Like they didn't throw the ball in the first half at all.
No, I think I didn't write down his carries, but I think he had 24. I mean, we thought that going into that game, I was convinced that they were going to try to beat our secondary, because why would they not try to beat our secondary? Our rush defense has been decently solid. That's not been that big of an issue. Our secondary is, we've been getting beat on long plays. That's where I thought they were going to have Thomas and Neighbors, beat us that way. And honestly, I didn't even realize until this morning that Neighbors had however many yards that he had, 146. Yeah. That was kind of a quiet 146. I think Luther Burden had 149. I didn't even realize Neighbors had 146 yards. I think I was so focused on Jaden and Diggs rushing all over us that I didn't even realize that happened. I think all three of them had most of their yards combined. I think Thomas only had like 60 yards, and he's a stud too. So being able to contain them, I think they did pretty good. I think Chris Abrams-Drain and Rakestraw both did a pretty good job overall.
I think Ennis might have gotten hurt at some point, because I looked at snap counts and he didn't play a lot. Drayden Norwood played actually more than he did. I thought Chris Abrams.
Really? Comparably?
Yeah, Norwood played more snaps than Ennis did on Saturday. I thought KAD was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he leads the country in pass breakups. I don't understand why people keep throwing at him. go somewhere else. You know,
when I was doing that LSU podcast last week, and I'd watched the podcast episode from before, and they were saying about how dog water Missouri secondary had been, and I was like, well, I mean, our safeties hadn't been great, but I was like, our corners are pretty good. So I talked about that quite a bit on that podcast, and I was telling them how I was pretty excited to watch the battles between Chris Abrams-Drain, because I was like, I don't think you guys really know about kind of how good those corners are. But yeah, I agree. I think KAD had a really good game, and yeah, I was proud of them overall. I mean, you made their playmakers. You made Jaden Daniels beat you, and they did. Yeah. And he did.
I was really impressed with Jaden Daniels. Personally, I mean, I think that I was impressed with how he kind of just took over that game. I was like, all right, this is my game now, and it was frustrating, obviously, sitting there and watching it happen and everything like that. Just that this guy's gonna scramble, and the scramble for the touchdown he had was just one of the plays. I was just like, dude, just that guy is he's a dude, and he played really well, and I think that it's one of those tough ones that you're gonna rep. Devin Leary's not gonna do that next week. I can promise that. Right. Devin Leary's not gonna be doing that. So
AJ Jefferson maybe could, but that's about it.
I don't think he has the offensive. I don't think he has the offensive line to do that. Yeah, and I don't think he has the line. I don't think he has a line to protect him but I don't think his line's as good as LSU's.
I mean, what makes a great player great is when you know what they're going to do and you still can't stop it. Right. I mean, I always said that about Brad when he was here. Other teams knew what he wanted to do. They just couldn't keep him from doing it. That's why he was great at what he did. And it's the same with Daniels. I mean, and again, I'm not sure the Missouri defense is great. I'm not sure it's as good as it was last year. But I don't think it's Saturday that proves that for me. I think this Saturday is big to figure that out. They best not be giving up 49 to Kentucky.
No. The rush defense is going to be very interesting to see with Mizzou against, especially they got Ray Davis over there at Kentucky. So that's going to be a really interesting one. And I believe you were talking about Chris Abrams-Drain. He was a projected day 2 pick last year. That's what people were talking. Him and Ennis Rakestraw were both guys that were these guys could go day 2 draft if they went in right now. And they've only improved their stock since they've came back. So really great to see. Caleb Evans, we got to see him against the Minnesota Vikings, Kansas City Chiefs. Got to see him play. He's been playing really well this year. So, I mean, DBU, some are saying that the Mizzou is...
I mean, DBU did play on Saturday at Furrow Field, but...
How far DBU has fallen because they're DBs this year?
Yeah, not right now.
Not so much DBU right now.
Yeah.
They come.
I do want to ask a question about Tyler Stevens. How do you keep him in? How do you keep him in the game? Okay, so one drop pass you can deal with because Luther drops passes. Yeah. I mean that happens. 2 drops. Pretty unacceptable. 3 and 4 is on coaching, in my personal opinion. You can't keep them in the game because at that point it's mental. You have to put Norfleet in. You have to put who's the Jordan Harris, right? Jordan Harris. You can't keep him in the game. He was a liability, and I mean he cost it.
It hurt. No question. I agree. I said the same thing this morning. The 4th one, that's not his fault, man. I mean,
coaching.
It's tough to have him in there, and it's a little bit surprising. And look, I'm not saying Brady should do this because you play with who's out there and you throw to the guy that's open, right? Yep. I've seen games like that where the quarterback sees a guy and goes, "Oh no, I'm not throwing to that guy." Because I've been burned. And I don't think that means you give up on Tyler Stevens for the season.
Right.
I'd have given up on him for that day, but I would play Norfleet more because Norfleet's a true freshman. And Tyler Stevens got 6 games left. You can't have that high. And we've seen him for a year and a half. And I'm not going to pretend that I break down tight end blocking. Maybe he's excellent at it. I don't really know. Because it's not something I care that much about. That's the coach's job, not mine. But if you want to have him in there to run block and do that, and every now and then be an outlet receiver, okay. But if you want the tight end to be part of the passing game, I don't think he can be the guy.
It's not a situation like Connor Tollison where if you want, we don't have another option. You know what I mean? You have other options. Like, you have other people you can put in if you want to do the tight end passing game. We don't really have an option.
He's been good in that. Like, I don't feel like that's like that bad of an option either. Like,
Northfleet,
especially,
is that what you said?
Yeah. Northfleet, yeah. I don't feel like that's that bad. We were talking to Dante Hall kind of about this on a podcast because it was during the Chiefs like drop struggles, right? The Chiefs having problems dropping the ball, and Dante Hall said there's been times where I've thought, do not throw me the football. And after the second drop, you could just see Tyler Stevens be like, do not, scared to get the ball.
I mean, it was back-to-back plays.
Yes. It was just like, do not. He did not want the ball anywhere near him because he was not sure what was going to happen.
It was funny though. Somebody said on our board, like, I've never seen that. I'm like, dude, I saw it like 4 weeks ago in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, at least one of his drops didn't go right into a DB's hands and take it all the way back for an interception, a pick six. But I mean, that's at least a good thing about the drops if we want to look at the silver lining. But yeah, it's tough. I don't know. I've been impressed with Northfleet this year, probably just because it's a low bar to clear, right? When we're talking about the tight end passing game in Missouri. So I'm like, look at that guy. He can catch the football. So that's pretty cool. But I don't know. I don't see Mizzou going a lot of heavy 12 personnel where you're using 2 tight end sets or anything like that. So yeah, it was a tough one to watch. And it was one of those things where like, wow, like that kid is feeling every single eye in that stadium on him right now. And that's got to be a tough place to be. So, yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of plays you can pick out. Like, I don't remember one of Tyler Stevens' drops and thinking that one lost the football game, but obviously they contribute, I mean, there are a lot of plays you can pick out. I still, go back to the penalty week. It surprises me. I was just on our message board and there are still people debating 3 days later whether it was dumb to throw the ball on 2nd and 1. And I just, here's my, I guess, justification for it. It's a perfect time to throw because if you don't get it, you've got 2 more plays to run to get a yard.
Yep.
Right. I mean, the idea is, hey, we can get a yard. If the thought is, well, we know we're going to get a yard on 2nd and 1, then you're going to get a yard on 3rd and 1. I mean, and so I think that was the pass that they had Luther open. It was just a shallow cross, and it got batted down. The LSU guy made a nice play. He got batted down to the line of scrimmage. And again, if they just snap the football, they probably convert 3rd and 1. But when you make it 3rd and 6, the entire game changes. You take the handoff to Cody Schrader or the option or whatever you want to run. That's not on the table anymore. You kind of have to drop back and throw. And then your all SEC left tackle he just flat got beat. He just got beat at a really bad time. And, then I didn't have a problem with going for it on 4th and 32. There are other options. They could have punted. It might have saved them a little field position. I actually saw somebody on our board suggested what they should have done is throw deep on 4th and 32 because either then you
arm punt.
Good happens. You complete a pass or get a penalty. Or if not, hey, cool. LSU takes over at like the 18-yard line or whatever it was. And if you can keep them out of the end zone on 3 plays, you're actually going to get the ball back down 6 with 45 seconds left to play. So it made some sense, but I'm not big on let's super nitpick 4th and 32, right? Like a couple weeks ago, Chiefs went on 4th and 25 and people are like, what are they doing? I'm like, well, I mean, he did actually put the pass in the guy's hands for 26 yards. I mean, if I had any problem with 4th and 32, it's, well, maybe could you throw the ball 32 yards or you're going to lateral? Could you have your super elite wide receiver be involved on one end of that? But again, what works on 4th and 32?
Right.
The people on the message board also had like multiple days or hours or however long to think about it, and Drink had like 30 seconds. So
Right. And I mean, look, like Drake wasn't in the top 5 of idiotic coaching decisions in the final minute of college football this weekend.
No, gosh.
the Miami, I think we all agree that Miami takes the cake.
Miami was bad. Jetfish didn't know the rules. Lincoln Riley screwed up. Nick Saban screwed like it. I've heard so many podcasts in the last 2 days that are like, these guys, why do they get paid millions of dollars? They can't even figure out what to do.
Yeah, but the USC game was pretty hysterically bad also at the end of that game. It was definitely Pac-12 after dark.
Or Big Ten.
Yeah, it's going to soon to be. Before we move on, before I tell the fine folks at DraftKings, do we have anything we wanted to hit on before we move to Kentucky in this back half here?
Feel like we hit it all? I don't know. I
think we did a pretty good job.
Good crowd, good environment. Very like 2008-ish type day for O'Field. I thought it was very cool.
And Brian Kelly, if you're listening, that wasn't homecoming.
Not homecoming.
Not homecoming, Brian
also,
Kelly.
Could have made it without a jacket on that day, right? So we guess at this point, Brian Kelly just says things, right? Like he has no idea what he's saying. He's
kind of an
words
idiot.
Just come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
When he's like, we use that homecoming as motivation. Ha ha ha. I'm like, it wasn't even homecoming. I don't know what you're even talking about.
Whatever works, though, I guess.
I know. Maybe we should tell people that they're scheduling us for
Just tell people every game is homecoming. You guys are homecoming opponent for the 9th consecutive game.
It must work because, I mean, Georgia made up all kinds of stuff last year about how everybody thought that they were a bad football team. But, like, everyone's like, nobody said that.
Everybody thinks Georgia's going 6-6. I'm like, not a soul said that. Nobody thinks you're going 6-6.
Now, this year they might. But,
they've got a good start because they're 6-0.
Yeah.
Drop the next thing. Their schedule, Maggie and I talked about this last week, their schedule, cupcake the rest of the way. They have, like, the easiest schedule of all time because they play in the SEC East, truthfully. And they have to play.
All their road games are like a joke. It's like Vanderbilt on the road, Georgia Tech on the road.
Listen, don't count.
Tennessee's like their hardest.
Don't count after the. Don't count.
Tennessee's, I think, their hardest game on the road. Yeah, Georgia Tech now. Who did they beat?
Miami.
Oh, yeah. Duh.
Ooh, yeah.
Duh.
There's.
Just talk about it.
I don't know. If some people wanted Mario Cristobal's head on a pike after that was done. I mean,
what are you doing?
I 100% support firing Mario Cristobal before he got to the locker room for that decision.
And that team is ranked ahead of the Missouri Tigers in the AP poll.
Because they beat Texas A&M.
Some people really do care about the AP poll. And but
hey, I got news. Most of the people that vote for it don't care that much.
Right. They care more than the people that vote for it, truthfully.
Right.
But before we move on to Kentucky, I need to tell you about the fine folks at DraftKings Sportsbook because the NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game this October. Get it on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code KCSN. New customers can score a $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet $5 on the NFL. That's code KCSN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right, let's turn the page. Let's look at Missouri's upcoming game versus Kentucky. It was going to be a ranked matchup, no longer a ranked matchup. Under the lights in Lexington. Gabe, first thoughts on this game?
It is a ranked matchup in the coaches poll.
That's fair. The Missouri did hang on the coaches poll. I saw you tweeted that.
By the way, courtesy of research Vahe Gregorian and I did during the game on Saturday. Do you know the last time that Missouri was ranked and beat a ranked opponent?
Oh.
Wow,
that would have to be like
2013? 2014.
2014 Cotton Bowl versus Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State.
Wow. That's almost 10 years ago.
So, like, they've been a ranked team and beaten unranked teams, and they've been unranked and beaten a ranked team, but they've not been ranked and beaten a ranked team since then. Anyway, I don't know. You asked me some question about Kentucky.
Yeah, just a general thoughts on the game type of deal. How you feel about it?
I feel like you flip a coin and see what happens. I mean, they're both 5-1. They both have a loss to, one of the upper echelon teams. Missouri's is obviously more competitive than Kentucky's. You want to say Missouri has the best win among the two, although the Kansas State win looks a little bit less best winish than it did a week ago. But I look back from 2012 to 22, they played 11 times. Missouri has scored 268 points and Kentucky has scored 263. Kentucky leads the series 7-4. The team that has won this game has always finished above the other one in the SEC East standings. So, this is the game that determines, okay, are you in this conversation with Tennessee or whoever it is chasing Georgia, or are you more in this conversation, hey, we're trying to be better than Florida and beat them? Because the winner of this game can talk about second in the East, and if it's Missouri, hey, go catch Georgia on the right day. The loser of this game really can't talk about that. The loser of this game is more talking about, okay, let's be the best of kind of the second half of this division. I mean, history proves that's what it is, and these are teams that are I think very, very evenly matched, which is reflected 2.5-point favorite at home means basically if they're on a neutral field, it's a pick.
It's a completely winnable game to me, as almost every time we play Kentucky is. I mean, you look at all the weird situations that's happened when we play Kentucky. A lot of the times
they've mostly been very close.
They've mostly been very close, and a lot of the times it's come down to something maybe weird happening and not typically in favor of the Missouri Tigers. But I think this year we have a very good chance of beating them. So I was looking at SEC. I think SEC might put this out. It's Missouri's number 5 pass offense versus Kentucky's number 69 pass defense. And then Kentucky has the number 15 rush defense versus Missouri's number 84 rush offense. So there's a little bit of a mismatch in there, but Kentucky hasn't really played that great of offenses yet.
Right.
So those numbers could be skewed a little bit. Even Georgia's offenses aren't great. Besides Brock Bowers,
they have the number 1 pass offense in the country.
Georgia does?
They do. Yeah.
Really?
I know. You wouldn't think it.
It's
no. That's a massive shock to me.
But I looked at Bill Connolly's SP Plus rankings this morning. Kentucky is 29th. Missouri is 30th. Kentucky's about 20 spots better on defense. Missouri's about 20 spots better on offense. Kentucky is significantly better on special teams. So, if you want to find something, that could happen in this game, but I think it's special teams. I think it's penalties. And look, I'm not going to call this a must-win game because I don't think it is. You can lose this game and go make up for it by beating South Carolina and Florida, and you can still go 8-4, 9-3 if you lose this game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is a big prove-it weekend for Missouri. They've done this whole something to prove, nobody believes in us, blah, 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 right? All right, LSU, hey, you put up a fight. That was impressive. But, you want to be taken seriously as you're taking a big leap this year, then you go beat a solid Kentucky team. I don't think they're great. These two teams they're in the same boat, and which one's going to step forward and which one's going to say, we step forward a little, but maybe not quite as much as we wanted to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be big. Something that I mentioned earlier in the podcast that I didn't really take into much consideration when thinking about Mizzou LSU was the result of their game the previous week. Now, Kentucky coming off of thrashing from Georgia. I don't know how much that'll play into coming into this week. I mean, it's an embarrassing game, a game that I want to say the spread was 14.5 or something like that. So Georgia,
there were Kentucky people that had themselves convinced this was the year.
Right, correct. Yeah. And I think that especially coming off of that big that game, how big of a letdown it was. I don't know how much that plays into hosting Missouri, a team that I know they probably see as a little brother here to them in the SEC in years past. So I don't know how much that plays into kind of how this team responds and everything like that. But
I think low-key, this might be Missouri's best rivalry in the SEC. Like, I don't think these teams like each other at all.
No.
I mean, Nick Bolton and a couple other Missouri players over the last... I remember Martez Manuel talking last year, like, I don't like Kentucky. I'm just... That's all I'm going to say. I just don't like those guys. I don't think Mark Stoops is Eli's biggest fan. I think there's some low-key, like, dislike among these teams, and they are fairly competitive. I think they both view it as kind of a barometer game, and like we always want to try to figure out what last week means, right? So you can make the argument Kentucky, the wind's out of their sails after Georgia boat raced them and all that. You can also make the argument, hey, Kentucky knew that game was over early second quarter. Like they just said, all right, forget this one. This one's done. We got Missouri next week. We can go now, and maybe they just kind of had an easy second half and just said, all right, let's get on. Who knows how it. I mean, you make the argument Missouri might feel pretty good about itself coming off. Feels like it should have beat LSU. You can also make the argument that they wake up and go, man, we blew that one, and they're still thinking about it. I don't know, man. They're 20-year-old kids.
Sure.
I'm optimistic about some things like Devin Leary not being as mobile of a quarterback. He has 12 rushes on the season from negative 48 yards. So that I'm a little bit, more optimistic about. They have a great running back in Bray Davis, 91 carries, 653 yards, leads the SEC. He had an amazing game against Florida, 250 yards, which, in that game, Devin Leary only threw for 69 yards. So it was a very rush-heavy game. Clearly, Florida's rushing defense isn't that good either. So we'll have to be much better in our rushing defense in this game than we were against LSU.
Kentucky typically is very good Kansas State-like, I think, in that you never look at them and think they're a really good team. But then you look up at the end and go, why did they beat us?
It's a good call.
Like, they just sat there and waited for you to make a mistake, right? They didn't make a lot of mistakes themselves, and you made a couple. Missouri can't have 11 penalties in this game. They can't drop 5 passes. They can't do some of the things that, like, I thought it was pretty interesting after the LSU game that the first thing Drink said, he said, we've been living on the edge with some things, and they burned us today. And I think even I didn't really realize it because when you're winning, you don't tend to focus on those things, right? But then all of a sudden, when they become a loss, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, when you think about it, they've been doing all those things all year. They just didn't burn them. They do those things in Lexington, and they're going to be sitting there 5-2 trying to get back on track.
Well, and we're lucky some of those penalties weren't like I wrote down how many yards the penalties were for, but we're lucky that
they weren't very many.
As many.
9 of them happened inside the 5-yard line.
That's exactly what I wrote down. I was like, they were all at that same point. Like they were the
it was like a 1-point penalty.
Yeah, the snap infraction or the multiple disconcerting signals and stuff like that.
That was disconcerting to me. I didn't enjoy it.
I didn't know.
I'm like, they had to have had meetings at the SEC this week, and we're like, we're calling those. We're calling those.
I mean, if they just called it simulating the snap, cool. I've heard of that. I know that's a penalty, but
no clapping allowed. You cannot clap.
They call it 3 or 4 times, right?
On both teams.
Yes,
they call it on both.
Missouri, 1 against LSU.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2 on us for sure. Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing until.
Neither did Darius Robinson. He said he didn't know what it meant, and I don't blame him. I didn't really know what it meant either. We all looked at each other and said, "What is that?"
I did kind of think it was funny when the officials would go delay a game, and you'd hear, yeah, and then on the defense they're like,
It was kind of a banner day for the Zebras on Saturday. I mean, first of all, there were 900 flags. there was a hot mic when he got caught telling Eli Drinkwitz Johnny Walker spit on somebody. It's all around rep for a while.
That was brutal. Yeah.
Oh, Johnny Walker.
It was a long game.
Trying to get a guy off of him too. For kicking a guy.
You kick somebody, you're getting a flag.
That's fair, but
at the K-State game, I stopped by a tailgate with some former Mizzou players before, and a couple of them were old offensive linemen, and they were telling me stories about like what they used to do to guys under the pile.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, that's a bad play. Like if you kick somebody, you're getting caught. It's probably not your fault. He probably had a hold of bad places or something.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Can't be kicking them. But all right, Gabe, as you mentioned, Kentucky favored by 2 points. Our friends at 2.5 points by our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's get into picking this one. Predictions. Gabe, what do you think? What's going to go down in Lexington here in about 5 days?
Well, you know what's not a good move for me? It's coming off vacation for 2 weeks and taking a coin flip game and picking against Missouri and making everybody mad, right? Why would I do that? I'm just here to make everybody like me. That's all I really want. So I'll go Missouri 31-27.
Okay. Maggie?
I am going to go Missouri also, but I'm going same 4 points, but 28-24. I think we're not a 30. We're not really a 30 scoring team. We just.
No, I think that's what they do now. I think that's what they do now.
If they want to do it now, I would love to be wrong.
Did they score 30 against Memphis? I can't remember what the final score of that game.
We did score 30. It was 34-27, right?
Okay, so that's 4 straight games with 30.
Look at us.
34-20.
Who are we?
That's what they do. They score 30 against Power 5 teams.
I'm still doing 28-24. I don't trust it.
Total for this game is at I just used my
2.5.
I Googled Mizzou Memphis on the same tab that I was taking all the information from, so now I have to take it back on it. 53 is what DraftKings has it at. Gabe taking the over with 58. Maggie, what did you say your score was?
28-24 Mizzou.
I think that's low scoring. I truthfully think that 28-24 is low scoring. I'm going to go 34-31, the Missouri football Tigers. 34-31. Is that what I said? Yeah, 34-31 is what I'm going to go with. As you can tell, a lot of thought was put into that score, and I'm going to take the over as well. I just think that this is going to be a weird game because every time Missouri and Kentucky meet, we will have a new rule emphasis by the end of the year, usually is what ends up happening. Something very strange. I'm sure Fumblerooski. Somebody will play.
How did we get through this whole podcast not talking about that whole punt thing last year? I forgot about that. Forgot that was
39 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's one of my favorite. That's one of my. I think I've used that phrase more than I've used any other phrase the entire year. 39 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's like my tagline.
Also, still even 12 months later, what hell of a play by the Kentucky punter.
Unreal for him to still get that ball.
Pretty amazing.
He gave his life for the University of Kentucky football team.
Is he still the
or at least his right leg?
No, that was his last year of eligibility.
That was it. He was done.
So he's still
he could no longer walk after that play. He was done playing football.
He's selling insurance in the middle of Kentucky somewhere.
That's probably had the signed cast up in his office.
That was absurd. I do remember at SEC Media Days, they used that play as an example of this isn't actually roughing the kicker. You can't actually
5 yards.
You can't actually do that.
5-yard rule.
I just can say that happened there. So maybe something happens and bounces Missouri's way in this game. Who knows? It seems like this year's been a little different. But then the pessimistic Mizzou fan will say well, that means it's just bound to happen. That means it's just not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
The face mask isn't going to get called on a third down.
It's not all even out in Kentucky.
That's fair. Listen, I saw a lot of people upset about that face mask not being called. They didn't call a false start up and shoot at the goal line. So, I mean, it all evens out.
They evened it out. Literally, I think the next play, something happened and it wasn't called or something else.
Both, by the way, were neither one was a hard call. I legitimately thought both of them from the press box, which is
that's what I was saying. Every single person in the stadium saw that face mask, and I'm like, how? Yeah. That's your one job is to watch the quarterback. I mean, he grabbed him and like yanked him around. This is the easiest call you could have possibly made.
The false start was really bad. It was a
False
really
start
bad.
also bad.
The false start was also very bad. It was
very bad.
It was that
I understand
that NFL game a couple of weeks ago too. I think it was like the Eagles game, and the lineman stepped. I don't know, like
that's probably Lane Johnson.
Back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they didn't call it, and I was like, that. I don't know. I don't know.
Xavier Delgado's was like a Jawan Taylor false start. Like there was no hype.
It really was. All right, that's gonna do it. We're all picking Missouri to win because this is just barely the biggest homer podcast there's ever been.
Yep.
Missouri's never lose.
You all happy?
Missouri's never lose a football game again. Is that what you want us to say? Fine, I'll say it. But yeah, hopefully get the bowl eligibility, match Eli Drinkwitz win total through 7 games that he did all the last 2 years. So that'd be pretty sick for that to happen. As we talked about, I mean, they've obviously got a tough game at Georgia. Georgia's still good, but they've got some pretty winnable games coming up here in the future as well. Some tough ones against some SEC East teams to really see where the program's at. But we will be back next week with another episode recapping this Kentucky-Missouri game. So until then, for Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson, I'm Tucker Franklin. Talk to you guys next week.